Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, if you're listening to this, I am dead. No, I'm joking. For the final time, I am on vacation right now. Where am I? This is the final Monday of my trip. Let me check my calendar real quick of where the hell am I in Malta right now, or am I in Florence leaving for Malta? Oh no, this is Monday the 25th. I'm actually coming back today, so I will be landing back in Canada. Either way, why do you need to know this? You don't care. You're here for the good stuff. It is episode 84, Letterboxd Four Favorites, part 4, where today we're talking another Ryan Gosling film, Drive, the 2011 film bro movie. Like, this is like an infinity stone for film bros. It's one of those. Oh my god. But it is unironically one of my favorite movies. I even enjoyed it as like a 12-year-old. I remember being 12 years old and watching this the year after it came out and being like, oh, I really like this movie because it's, well, I'll get into some of the reasons I like it. But usually when I was 12, it was like, oh, it's violent. That's kind of cool. But now as an adult, I've grown. But okay, before we get into our Drive review, of course, this is going to work like a normal episode. I'm going to do non-spoilers, spoilers. The spoiler section is going to be very hefty, so I'll warn you. You know, if you want to get the most out of this episode, why not watch the movie, pause the show, come back to it. Then you can watch the film. Let me know what you thought below, or get in touch with the show. Let me know what you think of Drive, the 2011 film. And before we even get to the film today, also, I just want to plug the YouTube channel and past YouTube videos that you can enjoy. Should we get into this? Should we talk Drive? I think we should. Let's talk Drive. Okay, I don't want to get copyright strike or anything like that, but today we are talking Drive. It is a 2011 action thriller film coming in at a brisk hour 40 minutes, just like Hunt for the Wilderpeople last week, I believe. Hour and 40-minute movies, maybe that's the sweet spot. For me, it's 2 hours. I think 2-hour movie is like kind of the place to be. But Drive, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, who went on to do Only God Forgives, The Neon Demon, Too Old to Die Young. This is his most like critically acclaimed film, or widely liked, I guess. There's other people who straight up like his other films more because they're not so kind of mainstream or straightforward like Drive, but this is probably his most popular known film. Written by Hussein Amini, who then went on to write masterpieces like Snow White and the Huntsman, as well as 47 Ronin, absolute bangers. The budget was $15 million US with a box office of $81.4 million globally. Reviews are widely positive, 7.8 on IMDb, 93% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 79% audience score, 3.9 Letterboxd average with a 4-star mode, so very widely positive. It's interesting, the audience score is only 79%, and we will get into why that perhaps is. The synopsis for Drive. Driver is a skilled Hollywood stuntman who moonlights as a getaway driver for criminals. Though he projects an icy exterior, lately he's been warming up to a pretty neighbor named Irene and her young son Benicio. When Irene's husband gets out of jail, he enlists Driver's help in a $1 million heist. The job goes horribly wrong, and Driver must risk his life to protect Irene and Benicio from the vengeful masterminds behind the robbery. The film stars. I'm surprised how much of the synopsis actually gives it away. I haven't watched the trailer for this in probably 10 years, so I don't know. Okay, the film stars Ryan Gosling as Driver. Yes, that is not his name, but he is the driver. Carey Mulligan as Irene. Bryan Cranston as Shannon. Albert Brooks as Bernie Rose. Oscar Isaac as Standard. Christina Hendricks from Mad Men, of course, as Blanche. Ron Perlman as Nino, Caden Leos as Benicio, Jeff Wolfe as Tan Suit. His name's not Tan Suit, he's in a tan suit, as well as James Babiri as Cook. So let's talk Drive. Here are my initial thoughts. This is right away what I want to get across to you about this movie. This movie is just like so unpredictable. Feels like a rope tightening around your wrists and just slowly adding pressure and squeezing. It is amazing. I have watched this movie 1,000 times in the last, 14 years since its release. I have probably watched it once or twice a year, if not more. I love it so much. It's such a quick watch. It's so rewarding every time you watch it because it is just such a straightforward point A to point B film that is still at the same time doing so much fun stuff, and it's almost like a patience exercise, which we'll get into. And I just love Drive. It's a movie I always recommend to people who are like, oh, what's a really popular movie that you like? And I'm like, Drive is kind of a film bro movie, or at least it's taken on this mantle as like one of those movies that film bros always talk about. And and I'm very happy to admit that is completely true, but I still love it. The production and the development of this film is quite interesting, as producers Mark Platt and Adam Siegel optioned the source novel after Siegel read a preview from Publishers Weekly, so adapting the book proved to be challenging for Amini as it had a non-linear narrative. Gosling, one of Platt's top casting choices, eventually signed on for the lead as he wanted to star in an action-oriented project. Gosling played a pivotal role in the film's production, which included hiring Refn as director and Beth Mickle as production designer. Newton Thomas Siegel oversaw the principal photography, which started on September 25th, 2010, was shot on location in Los Angeles, and ended on November 12th. And I am today years old that I'm actually learning this is based on a book. I've never gone to read the Wikipedia page. I just love watching this movie, and that's about it. It ends right there. But let's talk about the performances in Drive, because it's very fascinating. Ryan Gosling is playing this guy. Like, some people think Ryan Gosling is Ken. He is the guy from The Notebook. He's not this Ryan Gosling. This is a very different version of him. If you've seen Blade Runner 2049, you know he's very capable of what he's doing in this film. But is this my favorite performance of his? Very close to the top. I would say it's on my Mount Rushmore. If I had to do a Mount Rushmore of Ryan Gosling performances, it would be The Nice Guys, La La Land, probably Barbie because it's his most like out there insane one, and then Drive. I think I would probably go those four. Yeah, but he is so tactical for the first half of this movie, and then you slowly see him kind of slipping or going into avenues that he wouldn't probably go before until he met Irene. Like, this is a love story at the end of the day, and you know me, I love movies that make you feel. I love The Batman. I love it for the love story. I love La La Land, obviously, because it's a romance. Hunt for the Wilder People is about family. I hope that you gather, if anything, from this Letterboxd Four Favorite series, first of all, that you can like very different movies in your top four. Don't feel like you need to, like the most, filmsy. I don't want to use the word snobby because there's no such thing as snobby art. Art is just art. You shouldn't be ashamed to have your favorite movies be these very prestigious art house films or very like classic films from, it's a 1936 Polish film. If your four favorite films are like that, that's totally fine. That's really cool. And it just shows that you have a very interesting historical approach, or you really love these like sacred ancient texts, and you can get a lot out of any movie, no matter the period. Or if your four favorite movies are like at the other end of the spectrum, maybe like me, where all four of your movies are very mainstream, that is totally fine too, because those are big movies as well. And honestly, I like when people have these very different Letterboxd Four Favorites. Like, I love the videos that they do with actors, directors, writers, and all these people asking them, what are your four favorites? And some of them are just four favorite movies they've watched recently. And that's a whole other can of worms, that it's like, what do you define as your four favorite movies? Is it your four favorite movies of all time? Is it your four favorite movies right now? Is it four like classic movies that you know aren't that great, but they were important to you growing up? All that good stuff. I would say my four favorites are like my four favorite movies right now, but I could give you probably my top 50 movies or my 50 favorite movies because they're so hard to rank. Anyways, I hope what you get from my four favorite movies is that I like movies where we meet someone in the middle of a very important part in their life. With The Batman, he's very close to kind of giving up on Gotham almost. La La Land, Mia and Sebastian are both at very pivotal moments of their career. Hunt for the Wilder People as well. Like, Ricky Baker is probably one home away from going back to juvie, and now Hector and Bella have finally found their right child, and it's a very important moment in their life as well. But then we come to Drive, where Driver has been in LA for like 5 or 6 years, and he's always just kept to himself, kind of gone to work and all this stuff, and his life is at a very pivotal moment where he can just kind of keep doing this stuff, but then he meets Irene, and it's the most important moment of his life. And I love stories like that. Also, all of my movies are bittersweet films. Like, they don't end happily in every sense of the way. Like, they're not perfect endings for all of our characters. There are bittersweet moments. I love movies with bittersweet moments. Those are the best movies. I don't like when everything is so neatly tied up. I like when our hero has something to look back on that they are disappointed about. Like, even Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the first one, the end of the movie, it's him telling Mary Jane that he can't be with her. Bittersweet ending, because he's figured out what he needs to do with his responsibility, but also he can't get the girl. I love movies with bittersweet endings. It's the very best. But let's get back to Drive, of course. Let's continue with the performances, because there's Carey Mulligan after Ryan Gosling. What a can of worms that was. I can't believe I was still talking about the performances. But Carey Mulligan, she's fantastic in this, but one of my biggest complaints with this movie is always that she seems to trail off a little bit in the second half, or there's less for her to be involved in or to do. And I really loved how much she is in focus at the start of this film, but it is what it is. The movie devolves into what it becomes in the second half, so it's a little different, and I understand that she might be less. Then we have Bryan Cranston as Shannon, who's amazing. He's money obsessed, all this cool stuff. He's like this mechanic guy that is sort of in charge of Driver and giving him jobs and all that good stuff. It's just, he adds so much buffoonery to the story. Then, of course, Al Brooks and Ron Perlman are fantastic as our mafia guys. Oscar Isaac, this was the very first movie I ever saw him in. This was 2011, so he hadn't even done Ex Machina yet, and I just remember being like, oh, this guy is like cool. Like, he has a very interesting performance about him. All of the characters in this film, however, just have such interesting personalities, and none of them feel really like caricatures. They are very like classic, almost stereotypical noir type characters that you would have, the quiet, secluded hero, the love interest, and all this stuff, but everyone brings such a flair to their characters in this film, which I really love. And the story itself, like, this is the story about a man who normally is remaining distant from the world, I guess, but also just himself and his feelings in some ways, and then he goes against his better judgment for the sake of a possible relationship, and shit just hits the fan. That's what this movie is all about, and it's probably one of my favorite directed films that I've seen within this genre of these action thrillers or noirs. And it's just, I mean, it's a shame that he hasn't really gone on to do films that have been as successful, but he's been doing what he wants to do. I have seen a lot of criticisms of people online just saying, oh, it's a shame he never did another good movie, but he has his fans and he has his style, and sometimes that's all you need. But I do love looking at the blocking and how he frames everyone in this film. Like, everyone feels very crowded against walls or against surfaces and to the corners of our frames, and a lot of times, like, there's way less just people standing down the middle of the screen and they're straight in the shot. A lot of people are to the side in this, or our camera is sort of looking at them diagonally, looking ahead when they're up against the wall or they're sitting on a couch or something like that. There's a lot of really close-ups or interesting close-ups of as people are walking, as people are looking at each other, and I like that a lot. Or when Ryan Gosling is talking as Driver, we'll get a close-up and then it's just zooming in on him even more, and I like that. Or like a medium shot and zooming into a close-up. It's just really interesting filmmaking, and I don't know, and during the opening heist, we really do remain inside of the car instead of like outside with the action like some other films would do. It is really just like the camera operator is sitting in the passenger seat and sort of just operating on a dolly from there, or like a turntable almost with a camera, and is just looking at the 360 around them. It's very rare that we straight up get an exterior shot, or if there aren't that many, and they're not very memorable, or they don't really show the story. I love how restricted we are to Driver and these two random guys he's helping in the backseat to open our film. And I guess at the same time, they're talking about that opening heist, I do want to say that it's so interesting how Refn directs this film, because it feels so intimate, it feels so small, personal, like little not even a heist movie, I guess you could say. This is just like a little crime thriller where people are trying to get out of trouble, but he directs it in such an intimate way while also giving us some very interesting action or violent moments. I would say action with car chases, because there's multiple car chases in this film, but at the same time, there's very violent moments that just break out and feel out of nowhere, and that's because he takes his time with the rest of the story. He lets every scene go on as long as it can. He lets the temperature just always remain super low, and it never really gets worked up, and then you have these huge spikes of, I don't know, anger and violence and emotions, and it's just so fascinating to see how he paces this film as a director, saying like, no, let's just keep going, or even the editor as well. I should give credit to the editor in that sense, because they aren't like, I think you should cut here. It's just like, let's see how long this can go on for. Or, you know, the director telling Ryan Gosling, hold on between those two lines, like maybe you're only 2 lines on these 40 minutes of the movie, because he barely talks. But it's just so fascinating how slowly paced this film is and how patient the director is with this story. It's a very reserved movie. There's not a lot that is explained with our main character Driver. We really don't learn anything about him except that 5 years ago he moved to LA. That is it. He's a stunt driver in the movies part-time, and then at night he moonlights as a getaway driver. That's all you learn about him in the film, and I never want to know more. I love how much this movie is holding back and really keeping its cards close to his chest, because this is just a little sliver of this story. There's so much around him that is explained, and I appreciate, because we get to learn about Shannon, his boss, and his relation to the mafia, Nino and Bernie, and how they operate within the world of LA heists and stuff like that, and LA organized crime. But there's one piece that's always missing, or one piece of information that's crucially held back, and that is the story of Driver. We don't even know his name. Like, all you get from him are some sparing moments of dialogue, and you just have to focus so hard on his body language, how he looks looks, what he says, when he decides to speak, and who he's speaking to. And I just adore that about this movie. I usually am someone where I get annoyed that characters aren't talking. I'm like, oh my God, just say something. But I love how held back this film is. It kind of reminds me how Denis Villeneuve, when he was, I think during the Dune Part 2 press, he said how much he hates dialogue, that he wish he could just make silent movies. And I love that. And now Christopher McQuarrie also said that he's making a silent movie almost with Tom Cruise where there's little to no dialogue. I just think that's so cool, of letting body language talk and just letting the emotions and music of a scene talk. And it's just a very fascinating experiment going on here. This movie is really exploring intentions and actions of characters, because there's one line where Driver is watching television with Benicio, Irene's daughter, and he just says to the kid when they're watching the show together, like, oh, is that the bad guy? He's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, there's no good sharks in this show. Like, sharks can't be good. So kind of like, there can't be good bad guys, basically. And how him and Standard, Irene's husband, and these aren't spoilers yet, these are all in the synopsis, that clearly Standard has gone to jail, and that's what this movie is all about. And now he's back in trouble when he's out of jail. There's a difference between actions and intentions. Does Standard intend to be a good person when he leaves jail? Yes, I think so. His actions are forced into being bad, and him and Driver have a lot more in common than they think. They are two sides of the same coin. Driver doesn't mean to be a bad person. He keeps involving himself in crimes, and he's maybe considering leaving all of this heist stuff to be with Irene. Who knows? But at the same time, his intentions may be good, but at the start of the film, he's still doing all these crimes. He's still taking part in all of these heists. So are they two sides of the same coin? I don't know. I sort of flip-flop that all the time, and I think it's just so interesting to look at this film through the lens of intentions versus action. And now we can't talk about this film without talking about the music. I mean, someone on Reddit, when I just looked up like Drive 2011 on Reddit for fun, and it was like, this movie was basically responsible for a lot of the synthwave 80s resurgent stuff that comes in the following years, even though it takes place in modern times with zero 80s music. It's very true. I think this movie did really inspire a mini generation of filmmakers in a lot of ways. Like, there's a lot of films that could be similar to Drive, and I mean, even video games like GTA 5, of course, is like Heat, but at the same time, you can play Night Call on the radio. It takes place in LA. It's a very fun heist thing that has a lot of cool similarities to Drive, as well as Heat, of course, as I mentioned. I love GTA 5, side note, but the music in this film is absolutely astounding. It's one of my favorite soundtracks ever. I love the moment where they're using A Real Hero. Night Call during the title sequence is, of course, one of the most iconic title sequences. Honestly, like, as a non-film bro, I would say this movie is very film bro, of course, and everyone always jokes about like Night Call and the scorpion jacket and all that stuff, like, but it's just one of the coolest title sequences because it's just him driving around, going to his apartment. We're just sitting with him in this little car with the frames fading into each other and these different shots after he's done this big heist and gotten away with it. And we have that iconic Night Call needle drop above LA. It's just such a fun movie with such scope to it that you really do get immediately from the start. I think the first line of the film is there's over 100,000 streets in this city, or 200,000, like a crazy amount of streets, obviously, in Los Angeles. And I don't know, it just really immediately hits you, this impact of scope in this film that I love. And along with the music and the scope, I think the sound design of this film is absolutely impeccable. How gentle and quiet the dialogue is, and how it just feels so on edge, and it can quickly turn violent. But at the same time, during these huge action set pieces where it's like the car chases or whatever, my God, the engines roaring, cutting back and forth with each other, the handbrakes. But even that opening heist, which I think is one of the strongest parts of this film, like, this is one of my favorite openings of a film ever, of course. Like, that opening heist, you hear the clock ticking on his steering wheel where he ties a watch, or he attaches the watch to his steering wheel to set the 5-minute timer or whatever. So we have that clicking. We have him listening to the police radio, him looking out the car door at the same time, looking at these two guys that are robbing this place, as well as he has the basketball game on the radio because that's their getaway at this opening heist. It's just like so many different sounds and frequencies and things like that are cutting and fading into each other at the opening that are all blending together, while the score is playing this little like undertone synth type thing that's just so cool. And then obviously, like I said, the car chases, they're loud, they're obnoxious. I love it. They sound so cool. It's fantastic. I just love how this movie sounds, how much of a flow it has to it from start to finish, that the music is very quiet and gentle in about 100% of this movie, I would say. There's no loud and rambunctious songs in this. It's really really quite remarkable. I also do think one of my favorite elements, or one of the most interesting elements of this film for me, was Ryan Gosling's career at this point. Like, a lot of people see this movie as when he was starting to announce himself as a movie star. You know, he had done obviously The Notebook and Crazy Stupid Love came out. Like, he wasn't doing these big dramatic roles, and obviously he was very passionate to do this film and be a big action star, but he wasn't really known for that. And this movie is where a lot of people really started to take him seriously. Like, I even remember, like I said, when I watched this, I was probably 12 years old or something like that, and I remember being like so confused that Ryan Gosling's in this movie. I thought it was going to be a lot funnier or a lot, I don't know, sillier, or just like a little more tongue-in-cheek, but it's so goddamn serious and it's so out of his wheelhouse seemingly that I think it's so impressive that he was able to just move into that world so seamlessly. Like, at this point in the next few years, Ryan Gosling was a bit of a meme with like the hey girl, like perfect boyfriend online memes or whatever, but at the same time he was still doing these dramas. Like, he has the George Clooney film that he did, what is it, like he had started to do these sort of smaller films, whether it was Blue Valentine or Crazy Stupid Love was, in fact, I'm just looking on Letterboxd right now, or The Ides of March he went on to do the same year. Like, 2011 was a big year for his career. Like, he's doing a movie with George Clooney, he's doing before this Lars and the Real Girl, who's actually directed by Craig Gillespie, who's doing Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, did I, Tonya, did Cruella. It's just a really interesting career that he had been going through since The Notebook. Then he goes on to do, you know, Only God Forgives, another film with this director, which was critically not well received, but also The Place Beyond the Pines, The Nice Guys, La La Land, Blade Runner 2049, The Big Short. It is just remarkably impressive as an actor, the run he was going on and how he was building his resume at this time after, you know, The Notebook. Like, that is a movie that after that maybe you could get pinned in a box, but he completely broke away from that. He's one of those actors like Kristen Stewart or Robert Pattinson after Twilight, or even Daniel Radcliffe as well with Harry Potter. Obviously he's always going to be Harry Potter, but like all three of those actors have really gone on from the popular thing they did and done very interesting projects. But back to Drive, I want to talk about violence in this film. How, you know, when this movie came out, and maybe talking about the Rotten Tomatoes audience score, why it's only 79% and not higher, is the trailer gave a lot of people the impression that this was going to be a very rambunctious action driving film, and then when people showed up and it's this like slow, contemplative, randomly violent, or like only bursts of violence movie that they weren't expecting, like it's a slow burn noir, people were very disappointed, people were very pissed off, and I find that so fascinating. Maybe they got one of those dumb lawsuits where someone was like, well, this is false advertising, I don't know. But that being said, I do really think it's interesting the way this movie chooses to use violence. It's only in these very like highly emotional moments. It's not just like violence and gore for violence and gore's sake. It's when big things are happening in the movie, that's when it's most violent, especially from Driver. Like, you can see he has these episodes of violence where he can just kind of go into this protective state. It's a movie that's relying way more on the romance and the slow burn crime than it is on flashy violence to really blow you away. But when it does get violence, it's ugly. The violence in this movie is disgusting. It's ugly. It's very gory, and it's kind of shocking to the system. And with that being said as well, there's not a lot of nice stuff in this movie. There's not a lot of nice moments. I would say there's probably, out of an hour and 40 minutes, there's like 10 to 15 minutes of stuff that is actually nice or makes you happy. The rest of it is depressing, very dire, very sad, and it's one of those movies that is just playing on tension and drama the entire time, rather than being like, oh, well, you know, it's an action thriller, but we can make this a lighthearted action thriller. It's like, no, this shit is depressing, dude. There's literally one funny moment in the entire film where he has to give Irene a drive home, and he realizes he doesn't have any wheels on his car at the mechanic shop. He's like, can you give me 5 minutes? I have no wheels. And that's like the only little moment of levity where it seems like he's cracking a joke, and you're like, oh, he does have a personality. No wonder he's throwing everything away or risking his entire system for this girl, because it's the only person that he's willing to sort of pull the curtain down or open the curtain, whatever that saying might be. And you do really understand from a character perspective why he's putting it all on the line for Irene. They have such an immediate chemistry that's fascinating, and there's such a, you know, immediate attraction. Like, he sees her in a grocery store, he tries to go down the other aisle, but then when he goes outside, she's having the car trouble, and he can't avoid her. They live next door to each other, on the same floor, and it's just like all of these little things that are pulling them together. And I love it that he is just so swooned in this film, or he is so swept up in the romance, and it's so cute to see see. Then Oscar Isaac comes back, standard, his character, and ruins everything. And that's kind of the focal point of our film, or that's the turning point, the TSN turning point, as my fellow Sports Center watchers would say. And just to touch on the scale a little bit, I missed this in my notes earlier, but one thing I thought about with the scale of this film is that at one point Bernie says there is something like 2,000 heists a year in LA or some crazy number like that. And that really sort of took me by surprise of like, oh yeah, this is kind of just one heist, single small little heist, but it just happens to be a very personal heist in this city. But how many heists in the city are there that are like this, where there is very personal stakes, where obviously people are going to lose their families and all that stuff? But it's very funny how there's so many heists in the year, and this is just like a little sample size, and maybe that's why so much is held back, because this isn't a special case. This is just a run-of-the-mill heist where, of course, someone gets implicated with someone's family and they're pulled into this heist, and that's why they have to help, or that's how people get involved in this world. Usually it's for personal reasons and not for money issues, maybe. Who knows? But it's just a very fun stat of how they're setting up, how many city streets there are in this town, how well they're doing in this type of business, and how many heists there are every year. And it's just like a very lived-in world, and it feels reasonable, like it feels believable. There's nothing in this movie where I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel like it would happen in real life. It's like all of this stuff is not really too outlandish or feels like, oh, this, I don't know, giant explosion or this really far-fetched thing is happening. Like there's huge moments in this film that happen in the middle of a parking lot or at a parkade or in a back alley somewhere that, nobody would notice. And if someone did, they would just call the cops and it wouldn't be their problem anymore. Like everything is happening in such a self-contained way in this film that I find so fascinating. And I really love how disconnected they are from the rest of the world. Like when one thing goes wrong in this film, it makes the news, but that's about it. Like this is just a run-of-the-mill crime. These crimes happen in LA. It is what it is. But I want to get to 2 stars and a wish before we jump into spoilers, of course. Star number 1, this is just a fantastic noir for modern audiences. If this is a genre that you're interested in and you want to start going back to older noir films, I feel like this is a really good gateway where you're like, oh, I'll watch something modern and then maybe just go back like every decade and watch one noir. It's like exposure therapy or whatever, where people who are scared of heights slowly look at videos of heights or stuff like that. I think this is a very good starting point for slower paced films, movies that maybe have way less dialogue. You can start watching some silent films after this. You can start watching more noirs, as I said. I just think it's a very interesting film that can sort of be a gateway into other avenues. Star number 2, extremely measured violence and action. That's just one thing I really admire about this film all the time, is how calculated it is. It's not trying to do these flashy action moments just to keep audiences entertained. This feels like a film that is made for one person, and that's the filmmaker. My wish, I sort of wish Irene had more to do in the second half of this film, but there is plot reasons that it's understandable why it is this way, and I get it. But look, this is one of my favorite movies, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it today. It has so much style, grit, technicality, and it's just an amazing action romance film / noir, of course. It's a 5 out of 5 stars every day of the week. I couldn't recommend it more. If you're a Ryan Gosling fan, if you're wanting to branch out into like maybe a more popular film bro type thing, but it's still a good movie, like I said, that could be a gateway, check out Drive. Let's talk spoilers. Alrighty, everybody, spoilers for Drive. Let's get into it. So, Shannon's connection to Bernie and Nino. Shannon is, of course, Driver's boss. They've been working together for 5 years now because he showed up at his shop and was like, I'm a driver, let me drive. His classic, I drive, Lynn. I love that. But anyways, he now is working for Bernie and Nino because Shannon is buying this race car. There's this whole other plot, and Bernie and Nino are pissed that they're spending this money when the car looks like a piece of shit or whatever. So that's kind of how I guess they get in trouble, because they're just tired of these bad investments from Shannon. They're basically double timing drivers, what really matters here. But the racing element is just sort of how we get the characters to meet each other, I suppose. But I want to talk about Standard, the Oscar Isaac character in this film, when he gets out of prison, and sort of the emotional breakup of that part of the story, where, everything's going so well with Driver and Irene. They've been going on dates. He's been spending lots of time at their fireplace, sort of being a good influence on Benicio. But then one night she gets a call that her husband's getting out of jail, and it sort of really does feel like someone's pulling the handbrake, no pun intended, or pun intended, I guess. Anyways, it feels like someone is pulling the handbrake in this story, in the sense that fairy tale just kind of dies right there, where it's like, oh, but my husband's coming over. And it's just one of my favorite moments of this film, and a very underrated moment to me, is when Benicio's dad, Standard, is giving this speech at his welcome back party, and he says, like, there's a lot of people I gotta thank. I did some bad stuff. Irene, thank you for staying and waiting for me, and I'm so ready for the rest of our lives. And there's just this look on Irene's face that she's like, I should have skipped town and left this guy a long time ago, because I can tell, like, he's already gonna get in trouble. Or there's just this sense of regret and sadness on her face that maybe she can't be with Driver, maybe that she stayed with him because she knows he's gonna be trouble, and Driver seemed like a better option, even though he's also getting in trouble all the time, and he's a stunt driver. Maybe even if he's the best, he's still getting in trouble. And then there's that first meeting between our two guys of, Irene is in the hall sort of cooling down from the party, and Driver comes outside. They start chatting, but then, like, oh boy, Benicio and Standard come in the hallway, and there's just such an awkward tension between the two of them, where Driver walks away and he's like, yeah, have a good night. And you can just tell it's like, oh, here we go, territorial time. The dream is dead. Irene, it's over. I'm so sad. It's sad boy hours. But then, of course, it's a huge reality check for Standard, and it's this very sad moment where those goons come to get him from the mafia, and they beat him up, saying that, the price has gone up because while he was in jail, and this is a really great reveal, is that while he was in jail, he was sort of getting like protection from the mob, or like this kind of witness protection, almost in jail type thing, and their price has gone up. And that's how Driver gets pulled into this whole thing, because he sees Standard with the shit kicked out of him. He sees Benicio playing with a bullet that the mob guys gave him to scare them, and it's just like sort of a chilling moment in this film. So now Driver, being sort of the controlling, helpful guy he is, he's now sucked into this. And it is sad, because like I said in non-spoilers, was Standard planning on cleaning up his act and being a better person when he got out of jail? What are his intentions versus his actions? His intentions may have been very good and promising coming out of jail, but of course, because the mob came right after him, his actions were kind of forced, and he had to do something about it. They couldn't just run away, because they would be living their lives with their, heads turned around their shoulders, looking around the corner all the time. And same with Driver. I think, maybe he is a little bit more of a questionable character, because he has been continuously moonlighting and doing these terrible crimes, or not terrible crimes, like he's robbing places, which is bad. Obviously I'm not condoning crime. Let me make that clear. But up to that point where Standard is found by Driver after he gets beat up, Standard is sort of treating him like a joke, like, oh, you're just this guy next door that was flirting with her while I was gone, or you hung out with her while I was gone. But now he truly sees that, like, Driver is a controlling dude, and he's a dangerous guy who will get shit done, and he's someone that isn't afraid to really just insert himself and take control of the situation. Like, it's just such an interesting moment where he sets up the pawn shop heist, and he tells them, like, this is it. Once I do this for you, you have to leave him and his family alone. I never want you to talk to them again. Like, you can take the score or whatever. And of course, he's being set up. And I just love how he inserts himself in this family for better or for worse. He doesn't care. He's going to help them through the good times, which is, them sort of being a happy family, even though Standard's not around, and making the best of the situation. And then the worst of times, where the husband gets out, he's still kind of a fuck up, and he's maybe Irene's biggest regret in his life, and they were clearly very young when they met. So I don't know, it's just a very fascinating turning point of the story for me. A couple other things. One particular sequence that I really like in this film is the motel thing after the heist goes wrong. Standard is shot and killed. I just think there's such an interesting turn of events there, where you can see how quickly this is just going wrong. Like, it's just, I feel like that's such a pressure cooker moment for the story, where it's just one bad thing after one bad thing after one bad thing. The redheaded woman sets him up and is part of the team that is actually scoring a full $1 million instead of what was supposed to be like $40,000 or whatever it is. So I just love how Driver thinks, okay, I can finally do this one last job maybe, or we can all have a happily ever after, and then just so quickly he's set up. And that's, again, him having to turn to violence in these really quick decision moments where guys are coming to kill them for the $1 million and Nino, etc. And it's just, I really love that motel sequence, how it's, a lot of it's shot really slowly, and it's not a lot of audio, in fact. effect. Like it sort of cuts back the audio and fades in and out and goes into slow motion, and it's just so stylish. It doesn't feel rushed, and it really lets you sit in how awful this violence is and how awful this situation has become. And same with a lot of the end of the film. Like most of the music is cut out where Driver is going after Nino and he chases him down on the beach and he drowns him in the water. There's not tons of music there. Then when he's meeting Bernie at the end of the film, I just love how pulled back they are, that this is a simple conversation between two guys who have competing interests and are both having to answer to people because of other people's actions that they've been drawn into, for better or for worse. And I really love how, again, Riffin is just so good in this film as a director of knowing when to keep the quiet moments quiet and when to give us the loud, violent, terrible moments, or these, mix of loving and romantic and sensual violent moments, like the elevator scene where Driver goes to tell Irene, I have the money still, I can protect you, you can take the money, you can leave if you want. She slaps him and they're clearly having a fight, and then one of the mob guys shows up in the elevator. They get in the elevator with him, he kisses her, and it's just this really beautiful moment where the lights in the elevator dim and it's almost like a stage moment. And I love how focused in and intimate it gets really quickly. It's just really gorgeous before he fucking stomps this guy's brains in. And it's just like how big of a swing we can get within one scene of this film, how we can go from the most beautiful moment of the film to the most violent moment of the film. It blows my mind every time I watch it of just how quickly things change in this film. Once again, how he uses violence. Let's talk about the end of the movie, how it's, sort of ambiguous. Is he really skipping town? Because of course, Bernie stabs him in their showdown. He stabs and kills Bernie back, leaves the money with him. Irene goes to his apartment. He's not there. We see him sort of sit back in his car with his hand on his wound, and it's like potentially he dies in that moment and he doesn't live on from there. Maybe he's envisioning the final scene of the movie where he's driving into the dark night, not the movie The Dark Knight, where he's driving into the night, I should say. I love changing my perspective every time I watch this of like, no, this really happened, and he lets Irene go. He lets her live a better life that she can forget about him and he can go do something else. Or other times I watch it, I'm like, no, he dies in that moment. He's envisioning himself leaving and driving away off to another happy life. Or is it a metaphorical driving away that he's driving into the afterlife? Who knows? Let me know your interpretation of the end of the film, but it's just such a beautiful project. There is so much I love about this movie, and Irene is just such an interesting love interest to pull him out of his shell. How, she has baggage, he has baggage, but they just very quickly have this loving romance. I don't know. Everybody pretty much dies in this movie, I guess, other than Irene and Benicio and maybe Driver. We don't know if it's, he actually dies or not because it's an ambiguous ending. But again, it's another bittersweet ending. I think that's all I have for spoilers of Drive. There's a million reasons I love this movie, and I hope you at least got to hear some of them in this discussion of Drive. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 84, Letterboxd Four Favorites Part 4 Drive. I can't believe it. We've done 4 vacation episodes. I mean, right now it's only July 14th at 9:45 p.m. But I've had a great vacation, or I've had the worst vacation. Maybe I didn't make it because I drowned in the ocean or something, but it's been nice knowing you guys. But as always, please rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast. Leave a comment right underneath this episode on Spotify if you've seen Drive, or give me your 4 favorite movies. What are your 4 favorite movies in general? They don't have to be amazing top echelon art movies. What are just 4 movies that are your favorites? You can also find me on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Comment right underneath this podcast episode. You can also get in touch with the show via email, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and find me on social media. On Instagram and Threads, we are at Watcher of All Things. On TikTok, we are at watcher.of.all.things. I post every day on all of my social media. I do videos every day, clips every day, different smaller reviews and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. Go check out all the social media platforms, as well as my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Follow me on there. Leave a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show, and I will follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, I don't know. I'm back from vacation. It might be a little August catch up, or it might just be whatever is the newest film that week. This is the first time time I'm recording an episode. This is the first I'm hearing of it. I don't know why that just popped into my head. Maybe that's the late night ADHD kicking in. But next week, who knows what episode 85 is going to be. Either way, I hope you have enjoyed this little mini series. It's a little bit different from what we normally do in the show. Maybe it's something I'll get into in the future. Could be a lot of fun. But as for now, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for the love, the comments, the support, all that good stuff. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.